So France can be a terrifying place to drive for a North American to drive. At least it was for me. There's a lot of moving parts and unfamiliar signs and a lot of different types of vehicles, a lot more variety of roads, narrow roads, intersections at odd angles. In the North America, things tend to be a lot more geometric. Roads were built and neighborhoods were planned in the era of the car, whereas obviously in Europe they were essentially retrofitted for the car. Additionally, I came from a state, California, that did not have a reciprocity agreement with France. There are a number of states that do have reciprocity agreements with France. Now, what that means is that I can drive here. You can drive in France from any state with a driver's license from any state. You should get an international permit from AAA though, and you could do it for a year. But after that, your driving privileges evaporate unless you exchange your driver's license for a French driver's license. That is, if you come from a state with reciprocity. If you come from a state without reciprocity, you're out of luck, and that was my case. And the French driving test is, I think, significantly more difficult than the various states of America driving tests. But now that I've passed it, not without some difficulty, but now that I've passed it, I feel richer for having done so, for having had the experience, because I learned a few things that I might not have otherwise. Anyway, we're going to go out on the road on my bicycle and take a look at some of the things that I find interesting and really can be, I think, quite dangerous for a foreigner if you're not ready for them. Okay, one of the first things to know about French traffic control is that the traffic lights are generally on the near side of the intersection, not hanging over the middle of the intersection or on the far side of the intersection like American traffic lights. And also, to make it even more confusing, some of them are set back from the intersection so that if you go by the light, you're suddenly left without any kind of light to tell you whether to go or not. So I've switched this to wide angle so you can see better. But yeah, that is, I've many times unwittingly or by habit moved forward to the crosswalk and suddenly was without any light or other indication on when I could cross. It's an important sign to know. The red sign with the red round sign with a slash across means do not enter. There's another do not enter sign and the little sign underneath it, SAUF, S-A-U-F, and then it has a picture of bicycle, means accept the bicycle. SAUF means accept. So in other words, bicycles can go in there, but others, cars can't, or bicycles can go against traffic. One familiar sign is the stop sign. It's not even a word in French. Stop is arrête, A-R-R-E-T-E, but they've adopted these American stop sign. Also about these crosswalks, pedestrians have the right of way unless there's something telling them to stop, like a pedestrian light or a traffic light. Another important thing to know is that is the rule of priority to the right. So at intersections, unless they're like this intersection, unless there's some indication otherwise, the car on the right, regardless of who got there first, has priority. But those indications that override that priority come in many forms. It could be a solid line, Going back to the rule of priority to the right, or as it's called here, Priorite à droite, there's many things that override that. So obviously traffic lights override that. Also signs, it's like a stop sign will override that. And then sometimes you just need to look on the pavement, and if there's a solid solid white line for the person to the right of you, that means you have priority, and the person on the right does not have priority. Also, on major roads, little feeder roads or private driveways, typically you don't have to give them the right of way even if they're on the right. France, one of the things you really need to be careful of is there's all sorts of vehicular traffic, and not just cars and bikes, but everything in between. So you really have to look in your rear view mirror if you're in a car before turning right, because chances are there will be a bicycle right next to you. Not all the bike trails are separated like this, so bikes are quite often in traffic, and there's a lot of bikes around here. Another thing that's confusing is lights are used for all sorts of things here. So this red light is not telling these cars to stop, rather it means this entrance across the bike path here is closed to traffic. So when I first drove by this spot, I stopped for this red light, and I was in a bit of a panic as somebody behind me was honking. Here's a dashed line. That means this person would normally have the right of way, except in this case there's a yield sign. There's that solid line that tells you that you don't have to give priority to the right. Okay, let's talk a little bit about roundabouts, which come in all sizes and even some different shapes. I personally think they're one of the greatest traffic inventions ever. And of course, to North Americans, they can be a bit exotic. So when approaching a roundabout, it's typically a yield situation before you merge in. And most of the large roundabouts have two, maybe more lanes. Sometimes they're not marked, they're just wide enough for 2 lanes. So what that means is you should take the outer lane if you're going to take the first or second exit, and the inner lane if you're going to take the third or fourth exit. Oftentimes that's, think of if you're approaching a roundabout and you're ending up going straight, you know, in a 180-degree angle, then you stay in the outer lane, or if you're about to turn right on the very next exit, then you take the outer lane. Anything past 180 degrees, you take the inner lane, and then as you approach your exit, then you merge to the right, and always signal before you turn, and always look for bicyclers, because bicyclers use these roundabouts too. So one thing in France, you have to be very vigilant about looking over your shoulder and looking in your side view mirror to see if there's a bicycler or a scooter or a motorcycle or any other kind of, even electric skateboards on your right. You can see this roundabout's got many moving parts, including a tram that goes through the center of it. One thing I did not mention, but needs to be mentioned, is a fundamental difference between France and at least California, is there is no right turn on red. So no matter how rural, how you know, lack of traffic there is, if you get a red light, then there's no right turn. Anyway, this is maybe not the best example, but
one of the tricky things also is that traffic lights and sometimes signs are angled. You can see how that's angled so that both directions of traffic at an intersection can see them. So sometimes it's really easy for an American to not be paying attention, very close attention, American or Canadian, and you notice a light turn green and you think it's go, but it's not your light. It could be the light for someone else, for the other direction of traffic, or a turn signal or what have you. And if you're not paying close attention, you can inadvertently go when you're not supposed to. For pedestrians, a trap for the unwary is that traffic lights can be 2-stage or 3-stage. So you see the one across, it's turned green, but on the near one, it's red. That means if you're stuck on that little centerpiece, you can go across. But if you're over here, you need to stay put. See, that's in action.
In France there's a lot of bus lanes. They're bus-only lanes. You're not supposed to drive in them, but
and they have their own lights.
You can turn across them to make a right turn, assuming it's green. Okay, now let's go through some of the signs that at first most perplexed me. Okay, as you can see, I've put little tags on the pages. These are two signs that you don't see a lot quite often, but you do see them occasionally. This is Priorite droite. Now that's a default rule, so it doesn't need that sign to establish Priorite droite. In other words, priority to the right. But if you do see it, there's an intersection coming up where you must give the priority to the person on the right. Now this is the opposite. This means, and let's see if you can get it a little closer, this means that you can keep going even if there's someone approaching on the right. All right, let's see what we have next. The next tag. All right, these are two signs that confused me at the beginning because I didn't know what it seemed to be something like a do not enter sign. In contrast, this means no parking and no stopping. This, on the other hand, simply means no parking. So it's typically put on a street where they want you to keep moving and not pull over to the curb for any reason. This one is. In this one, you can pull over to the curb and stop for a moment. All right, what do we got next? Okay, the NADA signage looks like we got all the old tags on here, but this is good to know. The person going, if you get a lot of narrow roads, as you know in Europe, the person going uphill has the right of way. I've seen even French people be confused about that. In fact, they got in kind of a standoff with a person who insisted he had the right of way because he was going downhill, but he was wrong. Had me wondering, and I had to go run back and look at this book to make sure I was right. All right, this is good. This you learn a lot from this. So this red circle will appear on a lot of things. Oh, I had that do not enter sign wrong. So it's actually white, red background, white slash. Anyway, sorry to get tangential there, or get distracted. Red circle essentially means either a limit or a prohibition against something. So if you see this sign with a number in it, it's typically the speed limit. Let me see. These are all, we'll show you here. This means no bicycle. This means no pedestrians. This means no mopeds, etc. And let me see, what do we have here? Okay, here's the speed limit signs. So you'll quite often see these, and then a lot of times what you'll see is this. This means that the 50-kilometer-an-hour zone has come to an end. So it's not prohibiting you from doing something. It's actually allowing you to do something. All right. Let's see, what do we got next? That's basically it. So those are there's a lot of signage, lots of signs in France, but these are some of the critical ones that cause confusion for me. Actually, this is a good one to know here. In fact, I'm still a little bit vague about it. So let's read what it says under the tag. So this means passing is forbidden for all vehicles, and then that is the end of that zone right here. This, on the other hand, below means it's forbidden for trucks to pass.